Hello, if anybody happens to be here yet, early, this is what I call the pre-show, where I come on a little bit early to make sure that all the tech stuff is working before the pre-show starts at 10 before the hour. So if you do happen to be here, if you're watching this on a replay, you can just fast forward it to the start of the show. But this is just one of the things I do to make sure everything works smoothly. So if you do happen to be here early, please say hello and let me know your name. Speed looks fine. Okay. We will try that again. I got an error message from YouTube if you happen to be watching, and so I needed to reconnect. Sorry about that. If you are on early, please type into the chat box. Let me know for sure that you can see me okay, or comments and you can hear me okay. I did have a funny tech thing that just happened. Welcome to Karen or Corrine from Germany and to Marion from Oklahoma City. Thrilled to have you with me. Again, this is my pre-show. At 10 before the hour, we will start the official pre-show. But as you may know, the pre-show is just 10 minutes before the official show. It's an opportunity to just say hello, chat socially, go back and forth on whatever topic socially, anything you want to share with me or whatever else. That's what the pre-show is meant to be before the official show starts. So again, please say hello, give me your name, and I can see on YouTube that there's Corrine and Marion. If you can see me and hear me okay, could you please just put a yes or say yes, I can see you and hear you fine. That would be great, appreciated. Hello, Adriana. I had a brief technical issue. Adriana, can you please just put a yes in the chat box if you can see me and hear me okay? Ralph from Germany, hello and welcome. Again, if you happen to be watching this on a replay, this is the pre-show and the pre-show. You can go ahead and fast forward it if you want, or you certainly can stick with me if you'd like us. Stick with us if you... Yes, okay, thank you, Adriana, that's great. Seems to be fine on my end right now, too. Waiting about a minute and a half to make sure that Facebook comes on fine. And so again, just say hello, give me your name and where you're from if you happen to be here early, anything you'd like to share or chat about socially before the show starts. That's what this period is about. Marion, yes, I hear you fine. Thank you. Good. Cool. So again, I'm just, this is the pre-show. Things on YouTube appear to be fine. Things on my website appear to be fine, which is good news. And so now we're just waiting about 45 seconds or so to make sure that everything is okay on Facebook. So far, so good. Hello, Clark from Florida. Welcome back. Thrilled to have you here. Hello, Helly from Denmark. I think you've been on every single show so far. Hallie, maybe the rest of you have too, I'm not sure. I think Adriana has been, maybe Clark. This is episode 9, as you know, coming up. Clark, I skipped going to the beach to listen to you live. Thank you very much, I appreciate that. And hopefully you can go to the beach later. All right, let's see here. Facebook should be coming on any second. Forgive me looking away from the camera. All right, it looks like we're in good shape everywhere. At the moment, anyway. So if you happen to be watching, Please give me your name and where you're from and say hello, and anything else that you might like to say or share or ask on a social basis. Okay, this is the pre-show, so you can see the countdown timer now, 10 minutes until the official show begins. Let me see if we have anything else coming from anybody here. Hello, Todd from Wisconsin. Welcome. Thrilled to have you here. All right. So, if most of you have been on the show before, you know I've got a computer right here that lets me see what's going on in the chat box and the video on my website, and then a computer over here that shows me what's going on Facebook and YouTube. So when I do have to look away from the camera, it's because I don't have a partner or a helper or a producer. I do all this myself, and so at times I have to look around and look away from the camera in order to get things done. Ole, again, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, from Denmark. After the 8 weeks, I feel so much joy, so thank you, Robert. My pleasure, thank you. I'm thrilled that that's the case and that you're back. Ruby from California, welcome, Ruby. Happy to have you here. I think you may be new, Ruby, so I don't know if this is your first time live or if you've seen some of the replays. This is going to be episode 9. But welcome. Where in California? Just curious for Ruby. I have something here that's, Leo. Hi, Leo from Germany. Welcome. Again, if you've been on the show, you hear me say this all the time. I'm so thrilled that the internet exists at this point in my life because it gives us the opportunity to be able to connect this way with people all over the world, no matter where they live. And that just wasn't possible when I was a kid. It wasn't possible when I first began my career. And I'm tickled to have this kind of an opportunity to be able to connect with people all over the world in this way. So I particularly love the international participation outside the United States on stuff like this. Bay Area, Ruby. Okay, cool. Let's see if there's anybody else here. Again, anything else that you'd like to share in a social way, ask in a social way. That's the purpose of this pre-show. You can see the countdown timer. When that hits 0, the official show will begin. What do we got here? Looks like Chuck. Hello, Robert. This is Chuck from Arizona. I've seen all your trainings. This is the first one I can do live. Cool, Chuck. Welcome. I know it's hard to keep up, even when stuff is really valuable, and we'd really love to be able to keep up. I'm pretty active in a lot of different kinds of circles, and I'm constantly getting, here's a video to watch, here's that to watch, I'm going live, and I can't possibly keep up with it all, even if it's very important to me. And the really important stuff, I find the time, even if I have to do it on a replay, but it's hard. So I understand, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Jessica, good morning. Where are you from, Jessica? I always love to know. Ruby, I went through the Ultimate Freedom Teachings, Phase 3, 2 years ago. I popped and went through emotional purging for the last 2 years. So grateful for you and your teachings. Heart and I can't see what the other image is. But Ruby, again, I'm thrilled to hear that. I'm always thrilled to hear the stories of anything that I have offered as drops in the pond, how it has rippled out in particular lives, in particular stories. So thank you. I'm thrilled to hear that. Doesn't surprise me that it took multiple years because, as you know, that's what happened for me in each major phase of my journey into experiencing ultimate freedom. If you just joined us, please say hello, give me your name and anything else you'd like to share. We got about 5 more minutes of pre-show, which is social chit-chat, the way I look at it. So let's see if we got anybody else new here. Let's see, I got something up here on Facebook. It's about something else that can wait. All right, let me see here on the website. All right, Martin. This is Martin from Dublin, Ireland. Welcome back. I think, Martin, you've been on one or more, maybe all the shows. Watching from your website, things look okay. Good. They do to me too, but you never know. Liz from Florida. Welcome back, Liz. I think you've been with us before. Daniela, hi from Germany again. Welcome to Daniela. I'm thrilled to have everybody here that's here on this show. You can see the countdown timer on your screen. That's when that hits 0, the show will officially begin. This is what I call the pre-show. If you're new, it's just a chance to say hello, chat socially, connect socially before the official show starts. Yo, Alex from Cape Town. Welcome back, Alex. At least I think so. I think maybe you were on last week, maybe before. Welcome back. Again, if you happen to be watching this on the replay, you're welcome to stick with us here for a few more minutes, or you can fast forward it to when the show actually starts, whatever works for you. Woody, hello from Alabama. Welcome back, Woody. I'm thrilled to have you with us again. You've been very committed, which I appreciate for my sake and for yours. Cool. See if we got anybody else. I'm sitting on this chair that I've had for, it's called an Aeron chair, and I've had it for like, I don't know, 18 or 20 years. And I don't know if you can see, but it's got this mesh. And when I moved to Virginia from Florida, those of you that are from Florida, the movers damaged the mesh, and it over the years just kept breaking more and more and more. And I love this chair so much. And so I finally got the seat where it was ripped fixed. And so that's just a little tidbit of trivia. Let's see if we got anybody else new. Jessica, Rogue River, Oregon. I attended the workshop in Sedona 2013. Which workshop? Jessica, was that Ultimate Freedom or was that something else? It's hard for me to remember sometimes with the years. That may have, if it was, then it was the first Ultimate Freedom that I ever did. Was that one in Sedona? The timing kind of sounds right, but I'd be curious. Chris, hi Robert, I just arrived in China. The VPN works great. Wonderful. I'm thrilled to hear it. It saves my life. To be able to use the VPN when I'm in China. And I think I told you, I'll be in China I leave on July 1st, and I'll be there from July 1st to July 17th. And I'll be starting a new Ultimate Freedom, the first half, finishing the second half of an Ultimate Freedom we started in March, and then doing a variety of other events. It's going to be 8 days of training that I'll be doing in that time frame while I'm in China, which I'm very excited about. And so cool. Let's see if we got anybody new that I have not said hello to. If you happen to have just joined us, the show will start when the countdown timer hits 0. Before that, if anybody's online wants to say hello, wants to give me your name and where you're from, I'm always curious and love to know. Helly says, good idea with a new shirt every time. Then it's easy to see which show I'm watching. Quick. Yeah. You know, I kind of collect what I perceive to be cool shirts. Some of them are t-shirts and some of them are more dress shirts. But I love colors and I love unusual kinds of things. And so it's not just to make it easy for you to know the difference, but I just kind of like wearing my different shirts in my collections as part of things when I do live or streaming video. So we got the countdown here. Anybody else wants to say hello and give me your name? Chris says, yeah, where can I get the details about your workshop in China? Chris, if you go to my website, robertscheinfeld.com, up at the top, there's a link that says Join Me Live. If you go to that page and you scroll down, there's an email that you can use to contact my partner in China, and he can help you. His name is John Zhang. All right, so we're about ready to go here. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Freedom Teachings video series. Welcome to the Brutally Honest Tuesdays show, a place that you can come every week to say goodbye to hype, dead ends, and frustration, and hello to the truth that sets you free. I'm Robert Scheinfeld, and I will be your host. In case you don't know, I'm a New York Times best-selling author, a speaker, a coach, an entrepreneur, and a major renegade, thus the title of this show. I'm also the creator of the Ultimate Freedom Experience, my life's work. The purpose of this show every week is to drop major drops in the pond of your life, your consciousness, your awareness that can ripple out and affect you long after each episode ends. And the purpose is also to push hard and aggressively on lies, illusions, and stories so that you can discover and experience the truth with capital T's that's out there waiting for you. All right, welcome to episode 9 of Brutally Honest Tuesdays. And just before I started the little intro there, Julie came on from California. Hello, Julie. Welcome back. And Dave came from South Africa. Welcome, Dave. Thrilled to have you here. This is episode 9, and in this episode, I'm going to do an experiment. You may or you may not know. All of the other episodes, there's been a particular topic, and I decided that I was going to shift gears from that, and I was going to devote a whole show to just questions and answers. Therefore, I called this the Ask Me Anything show. And so I expect, but we'll see, that we may run a little bit longer. We may not, but I'm prepared to go a little longer to try to answer as many questions as I possibly can within a reasonable time frame. A couple of things. First, this show is not designed specifically for people who have read my books or have participated in live events or online experiences and have a specific kind of a knowledge. I know that there are people like that come to the show, but this show is designed to have a much broader appeal to people that know something about me, don't know anything about me. And so when I open the door to questions like that, I have to let you know that number one, I will be a little bit selective. If a question requires too much knowledge about something else, such that other people on the show live or watching the replay would not really understand it, I either will not answer a question like that, or I'll give you a brief thing with some sort of a brief overview if I can somehow make the answer beneficial to everybody, because the design of this show is to have, let's call it, universal appeal. And so that's one caveat. I will be scanning questions, and if it's too specific and requires too much knowledge of something else that I share, again, I may ignore it for now. There are other ways to get questions answered when you're a participant or you have been. Or I'll give you a very brief answer, but somehow add something so that it can help everybody. When you have a question, please type it into the chat box or the comments with a Q and a colon before it, so that when I'm scanning these things, I can quickly see what's a question and what's not. Be as specific as possible. And we'll see how many questions we get, how long we go, how long I can give answers within the time frame that we have. But again, this is an unusual show. Depending on what happens, I may do this on a regular basis, just do a show that's a Ask Me Anything show. We'll see how it goes. To me right now, it's an experiment. So before we continue, there's a couple of things. First, last week, if you were with me on the replay or live, I forgot to show my quote of the week. So this week I have 2 quotes to share with you. Here they are. The first one is, trying not to think is like trying to stop the grass from growing by screaming at it. And the second is, the intellect is the wrong tool for relating to what is, which means truth with a capital T, in the same way that a net is the wrong tool for gathering water. And both of these quotes come from an ancient Chinese master named Wu Xin, who lived something like 600 years ago. I absolutely love the things that he shares, and I use it a lot. His teachings, his quotes, to supplement what I do with the Ultimate Freedom Experience. So these two quotes are very, very important in terms of what they point to. So that's my quote of the week. I also want you to know, if you do not already have a copy of this new guide that I created, Living the Unblocked Life, you can easily find a way to get it on my website, but you can also go to the specific URL that you can see on this screen. This guide is a gateway into much more detail on the kinds of things that I've been sharing here through Brutally Honest Tuesdays. It starts with the guide, then it moves on to a video masterclass, and then lets you know if you're interested in the Ultimate Freedom Experience that I do live and online. I strongly suggest that you get a copy of the guide if you have not already. So, okay, those are my, let's see, did I do everything that I wanted to do at the start? I did. Okay, so let's move to questions and answers. Again, if you have a question, please type a Q, capital Q, and then a colon before your question so I can see it. Remember what I said about if it's too precise, if it requires too much knowledge of other teachings that I have that other people watching this show live or replay may not have. We'll see what happens with it. So let the experiment begin. So here we go. I have a question here from Clark. I noticed that there are other Brutally Honest Tuesdays on YouTube back when you had far less gray hair. Are they worth watching too, or have you advanced to a higher level and not to bother? Clark and everyone else that has questions like that, because I have a lot of content out there that's been out there for a long time, my answer to that is I can't answer that. There's no rule or formula, universal objective response to that. I tell people, trust your inner guidance, your intuition, your gut instinct, whatever. If you happen to see something like that, you feel a pull to watch, then watch. If you don't, don't. If you start watching and lose interest, then stop, but trust what happens. Benefit and value and breakthroughs and ahas and stuff can come from anywhere at any time. And there's this is a good opportunity to talk about something just because it relates to that. There's a blog post that I have on this, but I discovered years ago, and this is no shocking insight, all of you know this, it's just that I created two terms for learning. I created a term I call direct learning, and I created a term that I call collision learning. And direct learning means somebody says this to you, and this has value, directly, what was said. Collision learning is somebody says this, and maybe there's value to it, maybe there's not, but this makes you think of this, which is why I call it a collision. It's kind of like a pool ball in a pool game. One ball hits another, and this has value. And so you never know when you're going to get value, but my suggestion always is trust what you feel motivated to do, what actually happens, and see where it goes. There's no objective answer to a question like that. All right, Ralph says, as you explained, thoughts, feelings, actions, etc. happen through us and not from us. After the Ultimate Freedom Experience, do we have any true influence on our results? Can we achieve different results than before? Well, here's the thing. My bias and where I was led and what I saw the truth of with a capital T after a very long journey is that most of us going through what I call phase one, participating in the human experience, have so many experiences of being powerless and at the mercy of forces beyond our control, whether it's people, places, things, the stock market, boss, whatever. And we have such a gigantic hunger to be powerful, to be able to decide our destiny, to be able to shape things, to be able to choose, to have power. And this is very strongly embedded in us in what I call the cloud cover. This desire, I want to be able to choose. I want to be able to decide. I want to be able to get what I want, you know? And so, to my bias, that's where these kinds of questions come from, you know? When I knock out enough cloud cover, when I experience the truth, when ultimate freedom awakens, whatever the language is, then am I suddenly going to be able to have free will, be able to determine my destiny, to be able to get the things that I want, have some more control, be able to choose, and where I ultimately was led. And there's a lot more on this in episodes 2 through 8. Where I was led to is no. We aren't the author of our story, so to speak. We are not the creator of our reality. This, the human character, is not. Who we really are, which I call true creative essence, is the author with a capital A of our stories, and chooses and creates and decides and manifests, writes with a capital W, everything that happens to us, and that's always the case. It doesn't change. Now, what I can tell you is the idea that I'm not in charge, that I can't create my reality, that I don't ever get to create my reality, is something that the mind does not like. In fact, some people hate the idea. It really causes, I call it mental swirl, mental noise, and it's considered a very negative, bad, unpleasant, don't like this kind of a thing. But what I can tell you from my own experience is the opposite is actually true. When there is an actual experience of the truth of what's going on, that who you really are, which this is part of, which this is shaping everything, and you really are experiencing all of the aspects of truth with a capital T that are part of the ultimate freedom experience, there's no bad news here. I have absolutely zero desire, words don't serve here, so don't take them too literally, to have power, to be able to create anything, to put my stamp on what happens to me, to be able to bend the universe to my will. I've been talking in previous episodes about a shift that takes place, and when that shift takes place, and there's the experience of truth with a capital T, ultimate freedom, living an unblocked life, phase 3, whatever you want to call it, the words don't matter. Two things happen. One, there's an experience of what the truth is, regardless of what the mind thought or thinks about it now. And number two, there's again, words don't serve, there's a joy. There's an ease, there's a relaxation, there's a fun, there's a whatever that happens with resting in, so to speak, that truth. That I'm not driving the bus, I don't get to choose, I'm not in charge. And these are all just words that gloss over the surface of the significance of this particular truth. Part of the truth with a capital T. So, no, you don't have any true influence on what happens. What I can tell you is, again, I have no interest in having any influence on anything. I love the fact that the truth is that I don't, and I love how it feels, bear with the words, to be having this very different experience of absolutely everything that happens every day inside of me, thoughts, feelings, sensations, and outside of me in the world. Now, this doesn't do it justice, and in the ultimate freedom experience, it's step by step by step by step by step. Get a little bit of truth with a capital T explained, then experience it. Get a little bit more truth explained, then experience it. And it builds. And it builds until the experience gets bigger and bigger, and then this big experience awakens, which is what I call ultimate freedom, and it changes everything, including making this hunger. I want to be powerful. I want to be able to decide. You know, that one of the things that happens when that shift happens is that goes away. So, no. Do people achieve different results than before when ultimate freedom awakens? I would say most of the time, yes. But what I can tell you is this. The most important changes that take place on any journey into truth, with a capital T, not just what I call ultimate freedom, but any journey into truth. The biggest and the most important changes, and the only changes that are guaranteed, are changes inside of you, in how you see and experience yourself, how you see and experience everything that's happening inside of you and outside of you. That's where the journey always starts, massive changes inside of you. And then when those changes happen inside of you, it opens the door for there also to be changes outside of you. But what are they going to be? How are they going to manifest? What are they going to look like? It's different for everybody, and it depends on, as I've shared in previous episodes, your mission, your purpose, what your life journey is about. But what I can tell you is, in my life, if you followed me around with a video camera before Ultimate Freedom Awakened, and then you followed me around now with Ultimate Freedom Awake, some things look exactly the same and haven't changed much at all outside what the camera would see, although what's going on inside, while that outside stuff's happening, is radically off the charts different. And then other things are just radically different. The biggest things that I used to struggle with, inside of me and outside of me, the patterns that continue to repeat that I've talked about previous shows, stopped after decades and decades and decades of looping and repeating. So the tendency is that, yes, the guarantee is huge changes inside of you. The likelihood over time is also big changes outside of you. But again, there's no rule or formula. There's no guarantee of any specific anything. The only guarantee is massive changes inside of you. And no matter what happens outside of you, you'll be loving your story. You'll be enjoying your story. There won't be a problem in the way that you're perceiving everything. And that's the best that I can do in a brief kind of an answer here. And it's a very important question. So I'm glad that you asked it. Let's see. Todd says, "Hi, Robert. It's been since Journey to the Infinite for me. By the way, that was a 2-day event that I did a really long time ago that went a little deeper into the teachings from the Busting Loose from the Money Game book, in case you're curious. It's been a journey, so I have language that maybe you're not using as much now, but I would say I've been in a long phase too. Something that's been on my mind as of late is the idea of the guided tour of where I've hidden my power. Can you maybe expound on this in relation to areas where we seem to be stuck and what to do with that stuck? I could type another 10 paragraphs about this, and I don't know if this is even a question, but I just like your current thoughts on this idea." Okay, I've talked about this in previous episodes, and again, I invite you all to watch previous episodes if and when you can find the time, because every single episode of this show so far, especially 2 through 8 before now, there's pure gold in them, pure gold in them. So there's more on what I'm about to say in one of the previous episodes. People all over the world love stories in every shape that they can take. We love hearing stories at parties and having coffees and drinks with friends, and we love stories in movies, and we love stories in TV shows, and we love stories in books. And some people love the version of stories that happens with video games and stuff. There's millions of different kinds of stories, and humans have always loved stories going back in history as long as there have been humans. Again, in ancient times, it was all verbal. People would tell stories out loud. There were no books or movies or whatever else. Anytime there is a story that we love, the same thing is always happening. There's a hero, the main character, and the hero wants something. They're pursuing some sort of a goal. Could be more than one, but they're pursuing one or more goals. And as they pursue a goal, they experience extraordinary obstacles and problems. And there are times that, they have a plan and they start moving towards executing the plan to get what they want, and it's looking like it's working. And then all of a sudden something happens and they're in deep shit. Sorry, I hit the button here by accident. They're in deep shit and it's, oh no, now what am I going to do? I'm never going to get my goal. And so the whole story, at the core of stories that we love, is this. It's that simple. It's a hero who wants something, goes after it, and experiences different forms of resistance and obstacles and problems moving towards what it is that they want. And as the hero, as we are perceiving these stories, again, whether it's hearing something in a bar from a friend or coffee with a friend or movie, TV, novel, as the hero is going after what they want, as they are encountering the obstacles, the resistance, having problems, we have thoughts and feelings and sensations, and we experience things along with them in their stories. And it's the same thing in our lives, except our lives are much longer stories, but it's the same basic thing. So, if there's a journey from point A, which in Journey to the Infinite in Busting Loose is, phase 1, knocking out cloud cover so that you can experience more of the sun. That's what I call phase 3 in Ultimate Freedom. At point A is phase 1, cloud covers locked in place. You're limited, you're restricted, you're struggling, you're having problems. That's point A. And point B is the cloud cover knocked out. Lots of sun shining in, ultimate freedom awake, living an unblocked life, amazing changes that are things I've talked about before. So we got a journey from point A to point B. The way that the journey unfolds from point A to point B is going to be as a story with the kind of elements that I just talked about that are what happens in all great stories. If you analyze what happens in the big blockbuster movies and the best-selling books and the TV shows that are the big hits, I mean, there's variations on a theme, but it's basically what I told you. It's the same thing, repeats over and over and over. So on the journey from point A to point B, through phase 1, into phase 2, ultimately to phase 3, the mind wants it, and believe me, I wanted it, fast. No resistance, no obstacles, no problems, fast, preferably yesterday, or instant. But that's not what the human experience is designed to be. That's not what the journey through the cloud cover in my language, that's not how it's designed to be. Who we really are could snap its finger, knock out all the cloud cover, awaken ultimate freedom, transform our lives instantly in any way that it wants, no matter how big. But that's not what this human experience is about, as I've talked about in previous journeys. So when you say that your journey through phase 2 has been long, my journey through, I was in phase 2, you may or may not know this, 8 years. And that's not a rule or a formula, but that's just what happened to me. I don't know if you're longer than that or whatever. The reason for that is everything that happened in those 8 years for me and where it led was extraordinary. Now, I didn't, as I've mentioned, always feel that way when I was in the middle of it. But look, and we don't always feel great when we're in a movie, TV show, reading a novel and the hero's in deep shit. I mean, we have strong feelings, and the thoughts and feelings shift as we're going through these stories, But looking back, it's just, oh my God, that 8 years was unbelievable, and I'm so grateful for every second of it, So that's why. That's why we have these guided tours. And those of you that don't know what a guided tour is, very often on the journey into truth, especially when I'm involved, we get given a guided tour of the biggest things and the causes for them very often that limited us and restricted us and caused us the most pain. And I call it a guided tour. And so ultimately, those guided tour things become delicious and extraordinary and amazing. They can be highly judged negatively when we're in the middle of them. But ultimately, to me, they become fascinating. They become precious. And looking back, they're things that I just cherish. off the charts appreciate. But I certainly didn't a lot of the time when I was in the middle of it and it was so difficult and whatever else. So that's the best answer I can give you to that question on multiple levels. Alex says, does anyone really have control over their emotions? Here's my bias. And I will tell you, you don't really need me to be able to answer that question. If you just look around, if you look at your own life with brutal honesty, you look at your friends, you look at your family, if you work for a company and you're with other employees or a boss or whatever else, if you look at the world, if you look at what's happening out there with everybody, the answer to the question is no. Nobody has the ability to consistently, reliably control their emotions. Now, I'm going to be doing a future episode, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not sure, where I'm going to go into more depth on this particular thing. But there are some people who would say they have some degree of control over their emotions. But what happens is emotions just happen. You know, we wake up in the morning, stuff happens to us during the day. Emotions just appear beyond our control. There's a previous episode of this show where I talked about this in more detail. And so it's like, I'm angry. Now what do? The anger just happened. It's just up. We're just experiencing it, or depression, frustration, peace, whatever it is. Emotions just appear, and then we go to war with them, is my language. We try to change them, reduce the intensity, whatever, and there's a war, you know? So there are people that are out there, including some very famous names, that would say that they have the ability to manage their emotions or control their emotions or whatever it is. But my bias is, even in those cases, the emotion comes up with a life of its own that nobody has any control over, and they would admit that they don't have any control over. And then some people, when they go to war with what has gone up, appear to have the ability to move the emotions around. But to me, and the future episode is going to be how to end the unwinnable wars that you fight every day, because it's a nonstop thing when you go down that path. Emotions are constantly happening beyond our control every day. And then when they come up, if we fight them, it never ends. And even if some people can say that sometimes they have success, anger comes up and they're able to make it go down again, they don't really, but they have stories and they think that they can. But even if that happens, the war never ends. It happens every day, all day long, and we're constantly fighting what I call these unwinnable wars. So that question seems to have disappeared. But so no, to my bias, nobody has the ability to control whether emotions happen or not. They just happen with a life of their own in response to what happens to us every day. I go into great detail on this in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. And then the war starts with what has just happened beyond our control, and then different things happen. But most people, they never win the war. They're not able to make the anger or the frustration or the depression or whatever go away or lessen in intensity. Some people end up drinking or taking drugs or doing other things to try to win those wars. But ultimately, to me, it's an unwinnable war, the fight with emotions. No one's ever going to win that war, but the wars can end. The fighting can end. What happens with us automatically all day long with emotions can change, but it isn't because we win the war. It's because the fighting ends. And so that's the best way I can answer that question. Let me see here. Ralph says, is there an individual part of true creative essence for everyone, like the higher self? There's a lot of stuff out there in spiritual teachings that says that we all have a soul, we all have a higher self, we all have a whatever the name is that's unique to us. And my bias and where I was taken on my journey is that that isn't true. And the metaphor that I give, which I've given before, is of, once again, an author and a novel. And let's use the example of Harry Potter just because most people are aware of it. So in the Harry Potter stories, there are thousands of characters. There are, the primary characters, the heroes, but there's thousands of characters. One author, J.K. Rowling. And whatever you want to call it, J.K. Rowling's imagination, creativity, essence, whatever you want to call it, shapes itself literally through a creative process into what appears to be thousands of individuals that they don't talk about souls or higher selves in the Harry Potter stories, but they could. But there isn't any such thing. It's just the author shaping itself into these characters. And my bias, where I've been taken, my experience of truth, not an idea or a concept or thinking or philosophy, but an actual experience, is that it's the same thing with us. There's who we really are, which goes by different names. I now call it true creative essence, that's like the author, that shapes itself into absolutely everything that's happening inside of us, outside of us. And there's one of that, and we are all expressions of that. But my bias, where I've been going, where I was taken, although it was different for me a long time ago, is we do not have individual higher selves. We don't have individual souls, a lot of these kinds of things. This spark of consciousness or energy that enters the body. I used to believe those things. Where I was taken, they're not true. And the metaphor of an author and everything that happens in the story coming from the imagination of the author. There's a lot of this with different language in the Busting Loose about the holograms and patterns in the field. Those of you that know about that, it's the same idea, languaged differently. And so that's my answer. And like I said before, to me, this isn't bad news. There's nothing valuable that's lost. The truth is the truth, regardless of what the mind thinks about it. And I was taken to a very different place on all of this than I used to be. And the best metaphor I can give you is author and characters, people, places, and things in a story, and that it's the same kind of a thing. And so that's what I can share with you in terms of answer to that. We got a lot of questions coming in. Let me see here. Martin says, Robert, knowing that you're not quote-unquote driving the bus, do you still use to-do lists for working on projects? Yeah, the literal answer to the question is yes. The key thing to remember in terms of my biased experience of truth that I share is the whole human experience, absolutely everything that happens, is about the opportunity to have unique experiences inside of you, thoughts, feelings, sensations, and outside of you with the body and what happens in the world, the physical universe. It's all about unique experiences that are all treasured and appreciated and loved by who we really are, and very often judged by the mind, which all of you know. And so everything that happens, everything, in my language in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, is building blocks and raw materials for great stories, great unique experiences. And so if true creative essence wanted to have somebody living a life with no to-do lists, it could do that, and that would be a unique experience. And if somebody has to-do lists done in this way, that's a unique experience. Some software program that manages your to-do list, or somebody does it on paper, whatever. All of these things are unique experiences. And the same thing is true for me. I definitely work from to-do lists, and having to-do lists, working through them, getting the things done, all of it is experiences, which is what the human experience is all about. Let's see. All right, let's see what else we have here. Stacy says, hi, Robert. I have an unwinnable war with thoughts/longing for a previous love who is no longer in my experience. En route to phase 3, how do I make peace with these thoughts of longing, knowing the TCE is behind them? Well, Stacy, you recently enrolled in the Ultimate Freedom Experience, and you are going through that. You've only, I think, probably gotten the first week of content. The real, complete, and practical, beneficial answer to your question is going to be revealed as you go through the Ultimate Freedom Experience, and there's nothing that I can say here that would do any good or that would help you. And as you're going to discover more and more as you go through the Ultimate Freedom Experience, and those of you that have been participating in the previous episodes of this show, and if you continue with me to future episodes of the show, my work is no longer about giving people techniques. You got this problem, here's what to do to make it go away, or less intensity. You want this? Here are the 7 steps that you can follow to get this. That's not what I teach anymore. That's not what happened to me. Ultimately, as you said, and as I said, that creates daily unwinnable wars. What happened to me and what I now facilitate happening for others is this shift that takes place inside of you. And when the shift takes place inside of you, the wars stop. And the fighting stops. And the stuff that you're struggling with this longing for a lost love, whatever, takes care of itself in a variety of different ways that are possible. But it's not because this longing is up and you want to find some way to make it go away. You may not be wanting to make it go away. It sounds like you do. Again, that's not where I am anymore. That's not what I teach anymore. That's the unwinnable wars, because there's always something that's coming up that we don't like when we're fighting these wars. It never ends. The solution is not to find, and there isn't any such magical technique that will always make something bad go away, always give you the things that you want that are missing. That is an unwinnable war that never ends. So the war doesn't, you don't ever win the war when you're fighting it, but it can end. And the struggle with whatever it is, in this case, the longing for the lost love, will take care of itself. But in my language, it will take care of itself not because you have some technique to make it go away, but because in my language, you get into a truthful with a capital T relationship with what is actually happening that you're calling that, which you'll learn more about in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. And then once you're experiencing the truth of it, instead of the lie, illusion, and story of it, it takes care of itself, but there's not one way that happens. It can happen a lot of different ways. Let me see here. On Facebook here, it has moved down, but I can't seem to scroll back up again. So let me take a look at that. Alex says, is it possible to live without plans? And who is the chooser? Can the nothing that is me, i.e. the character, live in such a way as to experience choice? Well, first of all, I wouldn't use the word nothing. I acknowledge to me the truth that the Robert character, is my current language, is not driving the bus, is not in charge, doesn't have free will, isn't creating reality. That to me does not make Robert some worthless piece of shit, or some puppet that's just being put, doesn't lower the value or the appreciation or anything. This Robert character, your characters, everybody are all amazing. Just because there's an author and we're characters in a story, the Harry Potter character is amazing. He's fictional. He's not real. He's not really determining what's happening. The author, J.K. Rowling, is, but he's an extraordinary character. Voldemort, the ultimate bad guy in the Harry Potter stories, is an extraordinary character. He's not less than or nothing or worthless or whatever. He's amazing. I mean, everything is amazing. So I wouldn't use that language. Is it possible to live without plans? Absolutely, to a certain extent. I would say if I had to make up a number, 60 to 70% of the time, the way that I live my life, I don't live with plans or goals or wanting to produce specific outcomes. But then there are times that things happen and there has to be a plan. You know, as example, on July 1st, I go to China. And I'm going to be in China from July 1st to the 17th. And a lot of planning had to happen to make that happen and to get ready for the things that are going to happen when I'm there. So there are times that when I'm living day to day, no plans, go with the flow, whatever you want to call it, live in a radically different way. But then there are certain times where something appears and there has to be a plan. I don't come up with the plan appears. However it appears. Thoughts, ideas can appear in inner space that I'm aware of. It can be involved with other people. So there's a dance. But probably for 12, 15 years, I have not run my businesses. I have not lived my life from goals or intentions or trying to produce specific results. It's just been getting up in the morning and going through what happens, you know, as I've said before, and then going to sleep, and the next day the same thing, and where it goes, it goes. And as the journey continued and then ultimate freedom awakened, it's just every morning I wake up so curious to find out what's going to happen in what I now call the Robert story. But I don't think it's really possible to function with no planning. I suppose it might be for certain kinds of unusual situations around the world, but if you're in a modern world and you have a business and you have relationships, to some extent there has to be planning and there has to be plans. But even when there are, my experience of myself and the other people that I work with is I'm not devising the plans, even if I think I would have once said I was, or you all think that, no, I thought about it and I wrote my list and I came up with the plan. My bias is the plan appeared. The plan revealed itself, and then the mind hijacks credit and says, I did that. I figured that out. This is my experience. It's not a philosophy or a theory. You can actually see this for yourself. Look at the next time that you make a plan and look at what happens. Everything just appears and happens, and then we say that we did it. Is there such a way as to experience choice? Well, it depends how you define choice. All day long, everybody makes choices. But the fascinating thing to me, and the opportunity for you, is to take a brutally honest look at what actually happens. Not theories, not philosophies, not debates, not ideas and concepts, but just look with clear vision, brutally honest eyes at what happens any time that you appear to make a choice. And the thing that you can see, and it can be very hard to see in the beginning because lies, illusions, and stories, or what I call cloud cover, can be so hypnotic and so seductive and so convincing. And so it can take a while to be able to really see and experience the truth at all, and then more and more and more till it becomes consistent. But you can verify for yourself that any time that you make a choice, any time that you make a decision, it just happens. And it actually can become quite hilarious. But my invitation to you, instead of thinking about it, is watch what happens when you have a choice to make. And this could be something as simple as you're in a restaurant and you're looking at a menu. What happens such that a decision is made and you tell the waiter or the waitress, this is what I'm going to eat and this is what I'm going to drink? Look at what happens. Or it can be a big decision. Do I stay with a romantic partner? Do I separate? Do I stick with a job? Do I quit? You know, bigger things. Do I invest in this or sell my stock? You know, there's all kinds of decisions. But if you look at what actually happens, and on the first day of the Ultimate Freedom Experience, what I say to people over and over and over and over is, in this experience, we are going to focus exclusively on what we can actually see and verify in our own personal experience. Not philosophy, not thoughts, not theories, not speculation. what can we actually see and verify in our own experience? And so if you look at what actually happens when we make decisions, you're in a restaurant, you look at the menu, there can be permutations of this. All of a sudden, something pops into your mind about what you're going to order. But it just happens. You look at everything on the menu and then boom. And if you're like me, sometimes you'll look at the menu. This is a simple decision, but it's the same thing with more complicated, important decisions. You may look at the menu and say, oh, I think I'm going to order da-da-da-da. And then the waiter comes and you order something else. It just happens spontaneously, even though you kind of made a decision when you were just looking at the menu. And the language we use is, well, I changed my mind. So this is my invitation to you. Look at what actually happens every time a decision is made. And you'll see this appeared, then that appeared, then this appeared, then that appeared. Some of it's in your mind. Some of it happens out in the world. All this stuff that just happens. Ultimately, a decision gets made, and then the mind hijacks credit for it and says, I decided. I figured that out. I made the choice. But the reality is the choice is made, and we become aware of it, and then we're off to the races, and you can actually verify this. It's not, again, a theory or a philosophy or an idea or a concept. Okay. Virginia says hello. Hello, Virginia. Let me see. Carol says, my question is very simple. When my persona makes a choice, is it the persona or who I really am? Again, the mind can so complicate this stuff. To me, it's really simple. And it's a metaphor, but it's so accurate as a metaphor until such time as you actually experience this yourself fully and consistently. Imagine that you're reading a novel. And let's again look at Harry Potter. You're reading a Harry Potter book. And on page 263, Harry Potter makes a choice. Whatever it is. Do this, do that. Harry Potter makes a choice on page 263. The question is, did Harry Potter, the fictional character, actually make a choice? An argument could be made that yes, on the pages of the book, this fictional character made a choice. But if you then, that's what I call at the story level. But if you go up to what I call the truth level, did Harry Potter really make the choice? The answer is no. Harry Potter appears to make the choice, but it's really J.K. Rowling, the author, who made the choice and shaped her, again, imagination, creativity, essence, whatever you want to call it, into Harry Potter as a character making the choice. So it's always the author that makes a choice in a novel. It's always the writer that makes the choice if you see a choice made in a movie or a TV show. But it seems like it's the character. So an argument could be made, a different argument at the story level and at the truth level. But the way through this, and to me the only way through this, is to look at what's actually happening instead of thinking about it and analyzing it and trying to figure it out, because the mind can swirl on this stuff and can get confused and agree and disagree and fight and argue and whatever. But when you look, as I said before, with brutal honesty, what actually happens every time I make a choice, there's the answer. And the answer is experiential, and that's all that matters. The choice is getting made. You become aware of it. You didn't make the choice. If we're brutally honest, at the truthful level, the choice was made, and you become aware of it. However, you become aware of it. And if you then want to go deeper than that, which you don't need to, but you can, and you say, okay, well then, who made the choice? Well, it's always the author. It's always the creator. It's always what I now call true creative essence, or I used to call consciousness. There's other labels in different languages. So it's always who you really are. In any novel, in any movie, in any TV show, in any story, the cause is always the author. no matter what it actually looks like. The cause, the true cause, is always the author, no matter what it looks like. And this can be experienced. It's, again, not just an idea. But the most important thing is to bring this back to a very practical place. I used to be lost in the mind all the time. And it's a quicksand pit. And there's no way out of it if you try to resolve stuff purely through thought, intellect, ideas, and concepts. But when you bring it down to experience, you bring it back to the practical of what you can actually observe as what's really going on. Most of these questions resolve themselves, and these are the kinds of things that I help people to do in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Clark says, these apparent atrocities that occur, are they actually happening, or is it an illusion to give the appearance of a dangerous world out there? Well, again, language gets difficult here. On a certain level, yes, of course it appears to be happening. If you're in a movie and you're watching an earthquake like in San Andreas appearing to destroy San Francisco or huge chunks of San Francisco, an argument could be made there really is an earthquake and it really is destroying parts of San Francisco at the story level. It's really happening within the context of the story, within the context of the illusion. Everything that appears to be happening, but then you have to go a little bit deeper. At least that's what happened on my illusion. Is it real? Is it not real? You know, is it really happening? No, it really is an illusion that allows unique experiences, as I mentioned earlier. That's why it all happens. That's why it happens in movies. It doesn't matter if there's an alien invasion, or there's an earthquake, or there's somebody trying to rob a bank, or there's somebody cheating on somebody in a relationship. Doesn't matter what the specifics are. Again, going back to stories, everything always happens. When we're reading stories in books, seeing them in movies or TV shows, wherever, and it's the same thing in our lives. All of it happens in order for us to have experiences. And of those experiences, the feelings are the most important part of it. And so, is it really happening? Yes, kind of, and no, kind of, simultaneously. It is an illusion, like movies are, like TV shows are, like what happens in a lot of stories are. They're illusions, they're fictional, they're made up. But they're made up and they're allowed to appear real when we're reading or we're watching the stories so that we can have these unique experiences. And it's the same thing with us, my bias. Marion says, I have a problem separating words from emotions. Any insight for me? Again, I don't give techniques. I don't give people, you know, if you're struggling in this case, but it's with anything, with trying to separate words from emotions, do this, do that. Here are the 7 steps. You know, that's what's rampant out there. And that's what ultimately doesn't work and leads to these unwinnable wars and daily fights. On my journey, the separation of the emotion from the words, I call it pure raw experience of emotion from the mind's story about it. The separation just happened one day. Like everything else, it just happens because true creative essence, the true author of your story, using my language, the creator of everything that's happening that we've been talking about, creates the separation. I didn't do it. But one day it started to happen, and then it started to happen more. This whole thing is talked about in my Ultimate Key to Happiness book, or the Forever Free from Negativity Experience. That's an online course, and we also go into this in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. But the net of it is, like everything else I've been pointing to here and in previous episodes, it just happens. You can't force it. You can't speed it up. There's no magical technique that'll make it happen. It happens in its own way and in its own time. And I realize that the mind cannot like that and can fight with that. I did. I could have fought a lot more with it, but this is one of those things on this path, which I call the truth path with a capital T, the journey into ultimate freedom awakening. The separation of the emotions from the words and the judgments is something that just happens. It's a natural byproduct from this shift that I've been talking about. It's a natural byproduct in my language of the more sun shining in and what I call ultimate freedom awakening. It's something that just happens, but it isn't something that you can make happen. You can technique your way through, you can think your way through, you can manifest, attract, or create your way through. It's something that just happens on this journey as a natural byproduct of going more deeply into truth with a capital T. Chris says the phase 2 teaching has changed. How are we doing on time? Okay. Has changed my life like nothing else. And now I noticed my mind noise keeps questioning, what if this ultimate freedom final teaching won't set me free? Or what if I'm not ready? Well, the key to the answer to your question is in the language of your question, Chris. It's mind noise. You can read a novel, you can watch a movie, you can watch a TV show, you can be having a conversation with friends, over a drink or coffee or a meal, and somebody can say something like this. I'm really struggling with da-da-da-da. I'm really worried about da-da-da-da. You can see this in a movie, you can read it in a novel, you can see it on TV, you can see it happening to someone else. And what happens in your mind, it probably isn't conscious, especially with movies and TV shows and novels. It usually isn't conscious, but what's going on is, okay, I get it. That character is worried about da-da-da-da. That character is upset about da-da-da-da. That character is worried that they're not going to get free from this. And then it's kind of like, okay, fine, so what? I get it. What's going to happen next? And we keep turning the pages of the book. We keep watching the movie. We keep watching the TV show. We keep listening to the narration from our friends or family or whatever to see what's going to happen. And so where this goes, and a lot of that kind of stuff just does not appear in inner space for me anymore as a result of ultimate freedom awakening. But on the road to that, and sometimes there will be mind noise that still appears in inner space, and the way I am, it's not a technique. I don't do anything. This is just what happens. Noise like that will appear, and I don't think about this consciously, bear with the language, but what happens is, okay, a voice just appeared in inner space saying, oh God, what if I don't get free, from this ultimate freedom thing and whatever? Okay, fine. A voice just appeared. In inner space is my language in my mind, worried about this. Fine, I get it. Let's see what happens. And then on with my life, That's ultimately where this goes. But again, it's the same thing when you're watching a movie, reading a novel, watching a TV show. You're aware of it. Okay, there's worry about this. There's concern about that. There's a voice talking in my mind that's saying, what if this? What if that? Fine, I get it. Who cares? Let's see what's going to happen next. Now, again, this is what happens for me and other people whose stories ultimate freedom is awakened in. It's not a technique. I'm not saying to you, next time you have mind noise, just tell yourself, oh, it's just a voice talking. It doesn't mean anything. I'm just going to go on with my life. That isn't going to work. But when that becomes the natural response after this shift, then everything's different, and that's just what happens. When you're watching a movie, reading a book, watching a TV show, and you're aware that someone's afraid of something, worried about something, you don't use a technique to say to yourself, okay, I get it. In this movie I'm watching, this character's worried about da-da-da-da. Fine. What's next? Or in the book or the TV show. You don't technique your way there. That's just what happens. You have a different relationship with what's going on with this character in the book, in the movie, in the TV show. It just happens naturally. It's the same thing when ultimate freedom awakens. All of these kinds of things, including what Stacy asked about, they just happen differently, automatically, naturally, organically, whatever you want to call it, after this shift takes place. Okay. Kathy says, is it safe to say that if we have an emotion such as jealousy, that we shouldn't be hitting ourselves over the head for feeling that way since we aren't coming up with that feeling at this level? Well, Kathy, I'm sure you've heard this somewhere else, in some psychological, spiritual, whatever kind of a teaching. There's no such thing as a should or a should not on the path into ultimate freedom awakening, the journey into experiencing truth with a capital T. It is the way it is. And it is the way it is because True Creative Essence, the true author of our stories, wrote for that to happen. So there isn't a should or a shouldn't. And as I mentioned before, you can't control any of this if you're brutally honest. Jealousy, to use your example, is going to come up or it's not. If it comes up, a parallel thought, I shouldn't be feeling this. Damn it, I don't want to be feeling jealous, and then fighting with it. That's going to come up or it's not. There's going to be a fight or there's not. After hearing some of the things that I've shared, people that go through the ultimate freedom experience, jealousy can come up and then something else can come up. Well, wait a minute. And this is stages. It's a journey. Wait a minute. I'm not controlling this, the kind of thing where your question's coming from. But to me, the brutally honest truth is, I'm just going to use you as an example because you asked. You don't cause the jealousy to come up or not. You can't control it. And once it's up, you can't control what happens when it's up. If there's guilty thoughts that appear, there's anger at yourself, so to speak. There's all these different things that it all just appears with a life of its own, and we are aware of it. Can't do anything with it when we're fighting the unwinnable wars. But on this journey that I've been talking about that looks like this, once you walk through that portal and you move more towards the right where you can see things get brighter and glowery, whatever the word is, all these things naturally change on their own. Automatically, organically, naturally. But again, to me, it's an unwinnable war if you keep trying to change it. Oh, jealousy's up. Now what? Oh, jealousy's up, and then this came up afterwards. What do I do with these? Oh, this is up. Now what? Oh, this is up. Now what? What am I supposed to do? It never ends. It happens all day long, every single day. There's no way to win that. But what I discovered is the fighting can end. This shift can take place. And when this shift takes place that I call ultimate freedom awakening, all of this changes over time. My language is because we get into a truthful with a capital T relationship with who we really are, what's really going on, what's really happening, as opposed to the lies, illusions, and stories that cause all the pain and the struggle and the difficulty. And when that's experienced, it changes everything. It ripples out and changes everything. But what you narrated there, that we shouldn't be hitting ourselves over the head for feeling that way since we aren't coming up with that feeling at this level, that's the beginning of the truth finding its way into what I call inner space. Just that you could consider, well, wait a minute, because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 months ago, whatever, you would have thought that you were responsible for the jealousy, that you did it, that you are jealous, the whole deal. So you can see that it's starting to change. Not because you used a technique, I don't think, but because it's just starting to change, and this is the kind of stuff that happens on this path. All right. Clark asks a question that I want to answer because it points to something that's very, very important beyond just the question. When we return to infinite land, and that's my funny label from an earlier teaching for after our stories are over as human characters, whatever. Infinite land to me is where true creative essence lives metaphorically. It's just a funny term. It isn't meant to be taken seriously. When we return to infinite land, will we return our identity, or will it be as though we woke from a dream and not give a crap about what we were? Here's the way I want to answer that question, Clark, and I've mentioned this before, and it isn't just about this question, it's about everything where the mind is trying to figure out what is something going to be like, what's an experience going to be like in advance of having it. And before I do that, let me just say, where I've been taken, and I talk a lot about this in the Ultimate Freedom Experience, there isn't one way that anything works. Everything is custom designed as raw material building blocks for unique stories and unique experiences. And where I've been taken is that the truth with a capital T is when we die, there isn't one thing that happens to everybody. And I don't mean there's heaven and hell, or you could get lost on the astral plane or whatever else. I don't mean that there's like 5 things or whatever, or you get punished if you would. I don't mean that way. I literally mean there isn't any one way that it works. It just depends on what true creative essence wants to experience when this part of the story ends. And it can happen any way that it wants. There isn't any one way that anything works. But the more important message that I want to give you is what happened to me on this journey into truth and into ultimate freedom awakening, which is I got to the point, and I didn't make a decision. This is what happened one day. I'm narrating it as if I figured it out or I made a decision, but it just happened one day. A shift happened. I got to the point where if there's a question about any aspect of life, and I either cannot ever answer the question with certainty, or if I could answer the question with certainty, but it would have no practical benefit to me in my life, it would just be my mind could say, oh, okay, I figured that out. Check it off my list of mysteries to solve. If there isn't any practical benefit, I don't go there anymore. That's what happened. I don't spend time speculating anymore. I used to enjoy it and spend a lot of time talking to people and trying to understand things and speculating about experiences in advance of having them. And I don't anymore. This is just a shift that took place. I no longer ask questions or spend time trying to answer questions if I cannot answer them with certainty. And most of these kinds of big, truthful, spiritual questions, if we're brutally honest, we can't answer with certainty. We can feel like it's true, it can make sense logically. But if we're brutally honest, we can't say that it absolutely that's the case. We can't answer these questions with certainty. And most of them, even if we could answer it with certainty, let's say that I could give you a certainty answer about what's going to happen after you die. You could argue with me, someone else could argue with me, but so what? Who cares? You're here now. And you're having experiences with your body and business and relationships and money and whatever else, That's what's important. That's what your human experience is about now. It doesn't matter what's going to happen when you die. Now, some people could say, well, but if I knew what was going to happen, then I wouldn't worry, blah, blah, blah. And to me, that's just mind noise. The reality is it's irrelevant, and the only way you're ever going to know is to see what happens when you die. And if 10,000 people died and we could somehow follow them, odds are we would see 10,000 different things of what happened after this life ended. So that's the best I can give you on that. And again, very key important thing that revealed itself to me as truth with a capital T is there isn't any one way. There's no rules or formulas. It's whatever true creative essence wants to do. And true creative essence is interested in having unique experiences. So it's not going to have 10 million people die and have the same exact experience after they die. There's no interest in that. So it's always going to be unique and customized. And in some cases, who knows? There could be every possible option for what could happen if that's what true creative essence wants. But again, ultimately, it's irrelevant. It's just speculation. It's just philosophy. It's just thinking. Can't have certainty on the answers to it, and even if you did, it wouldn't really, although again, some people would debate me on that, wouldn't really affect your day-to-day life much. Even if you think, well, I could relax, I wouldn't worry as much about blah, blah, blah if I just, but, okay. Clark says, got it. Yeah, I'm having issues on this page with Facebook. Let's see. Oh, see all. There we go. Hold on a sec, because I've kind of ignored the one of these pages because I haven't been seeing all of the questions. So let's see. Actually, there wasn't that much that I missed. Barbara says, and we're going to go late. I was prepared to go a little bit late on this show, so we'll go a little bit longer. Barbara says, in your Busting Loose books, you describe techniques to gain energy from phase 1 eggs back. Does it make sense in your experience to continue using these techniques? I still want to get rich. Again, like the question I got before, I don't know if you were here at the beginning. I don't have the answer to that question. To me, all of these kinds of questions, should I this, should I that, in this case, should I continue to use the process, the answer will come from what you do. For me, I used the process, just to use that example, but this applies to all kinds of other examples. I used the process aggressively for 3 years. And sometimes, because I was so uncomfortable all the time, sometimes if I added it all up, it was 3, 4, 5 hours a day if I added it all up. Little snippets of process here, process there, but a lot, 3, 4 hours. In the most difficult time on my journey, I couldn't sleep, and there was all this stuff going on in my language now. It wasn't my language then, an inner space that I couldn't deal with. I couldn't sleep. And sometimes I applied the process 15 hours a day, 20 hours a day, because there was nothing else I could do. I was so uncomfortable with all of this swirl. And then after the first 3 years, I still used it a lot, but less and less and less. But it just happened. I was uncomfortable, applied the process. I was uncomfortable, applied the process. That's what happened. It looked like I was deciding, but it's just what happened. And then after 3 years, what happened is I started to use it less. And then less and less and less. And then one day, what appeared is I stopped using it. Not because of some logical decision, not because I decided, oh, this isn't working, because it had worked. It just happened. The desire to do it evaporated naturally and on its own. And I stopped. So the answer to your question will reveal itself as you continue living your life. There isn't any universal example. And when you say you still want to be rich, well, there's a previous episode of this show. The title is something like, I don't know, The Brutally Honest Truth About Thoughts and Feelings and Desires or something like that. If you haven't seen that, watch that, because it goes into more detail on this, and I don't want to repeat it. We don't have the time here. But you have to ask yourself, where does the desire to become rich really coming from? Is it vapor? Is it because of, something in childhood, whatever? Where is that hunger, that desire really coming from? It may or may not be part of your story. If it is, it may or may not be in the time frame that you would like. Whatever you think you might get, I'd be happier, I'd be this, I'd be that if I was rich, probably isn't true. Because the world is filled with rich people that are miserable and unhappy and hate their life. And it's interesting, in the news in the last week at the time of this recording, there were 2 very high-profile suicides from very successful, very famous, very rich, very well-known personalities that from a certain perspective, people could say they had it all. Thriving career, fancy stuff, they were rich. Both of them committed suicide. My son is a big fan of a particular kind of music that's called electronic dance music, EDM for short. And there's an icon in that industry who went by the name of Avicii, a rich, successful, in-demand, thriving career, committed suicide at age 26. So again, there's a whole episode about this, and these are examples, and there's example after example after example. Somebody really wants to be rich. Somebody really wants to be rich, and then they become rich, and it doesn't end up giving them what they thought it would be. It isn't the magic bullet that we thought it would be, and so there's all these layers to all of this kind of stuff. But your first question, is should you keep using the process? There isn't a should. We'll see what happens. If you're meant to, lack of better terms, you will. If you're not, you won't. If it's meant to be used for a while, stop later. Like with me, that's what'll happen. It doesn't matter. You can't screw it up. You're not in charge. What'll happen will happen, and your question will get answered by your story continuing to unfold every day. All right, let me take a quick look here. Liz says, are you now any longer identified with your character? And if your author has a tragedy in store for your character, you can now face the tragedy in a different way. Well, the first part of your question, Liz, it would depend on what you mean by identified. I used to think I was Robert. This is me. And I'm driving the bus, and I'm creating my reality, and I'm this soul or this spark of consciousness that incarnated and went into this human body, and all this kind of stuff that most of you are probably familiar with. If that's the definition of identified, that you think this is you, these are my thoughts, my feelings, my sensations, I'm the one that's making the choices, all those kind. If that's what identified means, then the answer would be no. No longer identified. I have an experience with a capital E of truth, with a capital T, of what's really going on that I can't explain in a couple of words. To give you an idea, when I do the Ultimate Freedom Experience live, it's 5 days. We don't get to me really answering that question until the second half of day 4, because a lot of things have to happen before you can really experience the answer instead of just get an intellectual answer. So if that's what you mean by identified, then the answer is no. I know that this isn't me, that this is a character in a story that I'm having a unique experience as, and that who I really am is true creative essence. The second question falls into that speculation thing. I don't know what'll happen if there was a tragedy, so-called, that happened in the Robert story. I would have to wait and see what happens. Odds are, whatever would come up in response to a tragedy, which is a word, doesn't mean anything, would be very different than what I now call the old Robert, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. If that same thing happened, what would have happened? The response, odds are it would be radically different, but I don't know and I don't care, and there's no way to know, and I don't speculate anymore. The mind loves to speculate, the mind loves to project forward and try to figure out and understand what something's going to be like in advance of it happening. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Ultimately, you have to wait and have the actual experience and then see what happens. Aaron says, you just said that emotions are the most important part of the story space experience. Can you please expand upon that, Robert? The best way that I can explain this is to give you an insight into storytelling. And I could talk for hours about this, and there's a zillion books that have been written about it. There is an art to storytelling. And whether the storytelling is in the form of a book that's a story, or it's a movie, or it's TV show episodes, and it also applies in a certain way to video games and other things. But there's a formula, and people learn how to do this. Some people seem to have natural ability in the way that it appears, and many, many people are taught, and they study the art of storytelling. And when people study about movies, the first thing, because it's a great example, but it's true of novels and TV shows and all forms of storytelling, what you're taught is people come to the movies, they come to stories to feel. And if they don't feel, they're gone. You must make them feel. And then the experts will say you can get them to think, you can teach them something, you can zing in some messages, but first you've got to create a framework that causes them to feel. And if they don't feel, they're gone. They close the book, they walk out of the theater, They hit stop on the remote of a DVD, turn off the TV, whatever else it is. We're not aware of this consciously, most people, but it's the motivation behind why we do just about everything, is to feel. And a lot of times if people say, I didn't like that book. That was a really boring movie. That was a really stupid episode, of that TV show or whatever. What we're really saying without being aware of it until you really get into a truthful relationship with is that story did not cause me to feel a lot for the 2 hours, for the 500 pages, for the 40 minutes of the episode. This is why we watch sports. This is why we play sports. This is why we listen to music. Ultimately, it's why we do everything, is because of the feelings that are involved. It's the most important part, if you want to put it on a hierarchy, of the human experience. And it's one of the most delicious things to true creative essence, who we really are, who doesn't have any feelings or emotions in its natural state, is my bias, and loves the opportunity to feel all these unique feelings in these unique contexts. So that's the best that I can give you in just a quick kind of an answer, but if you study this stuff about the art of storytelling, that's the first thing that they tell you. You have to make the audience feel. And you have to make them feel a lot. And if you don't, they're gone. And that's what we hunger for. And on the flip side of what I said, if you watch a movie and at the end of it, you go, oh my God, that was a great movie, and you go tell all your friends they have to go, or you go out on a ride in an amusement park. And at the end of the ride, you go, oh my God, that was so great. I got to go do that again. What you're really saying without being aware of it is, I felt in some really cool ways while I watched the movie, read the story, rode the ride in the amusement park, watched the sports, listened to the music, whatever it is. I felt in a unique way of experiencing feelings that we go into in the ultimate freedom experience. And that's, to me, if it's not the most delicious experience that a human can have, experiencing emotions in a radically different way, then it's way up the list of the highest priorities. And it is the highest priority when people are teaching you about writing novels, writing fiction, writing movies, writing TV shows. That's what it's all about. And to me, it's also true about the human experience. So let me just take a quick look here. We're pretty much out of time. But I think I've gotten to most of the questions that I can see. Let me see here. All right, here's the last one I'll go into. And then I've got a short message that I want to play for you, and then we will close for this week. Alex says, what about the use of spiritual principles such as honesty, acceptance, tolerance? Does truth with a capital T have any relation to such concepts in their application? This gets back to the same thing that I've said multiple times in this show and in other episodes of the show. I just got an email to give you an example from a famous spiritual teacher. And it was a quote, with their name at the bottom. And the quote was something like, the magic to being at peace is to just accept everything the way that it is. And those kinds of things used to drive me crazy, because it's true. If you could accept everything the way that it is, if you could be tolerant, if you could, I don't know exactly what you're meaning by honesty, but if I could do those things, I get that my life would be better, In the old days, there used to be a voice that would scream in inner space in my language that would say, fuck you, or would say, thank you very much for telling me to do something that I can't do. And you can't tell me how to do it. You're just telling me accept what is. Well, non-acceptance is what keeps happening, and no matter what I do, non-acceptance keeps appearing in inner space. And then I'm off to the races fighting it, trying to change it, hating it, feeling bad about it. And so a lot of these spiritual principles, they tell you, do this. And the truth is, if you could do this, your life would be better as you perceive it. You'd be more peaceful. You'd be more happy. You'd be less stressed. You'd be whatever, except with almost no exceptions, although certain people would argue with me, it almost never happens. There isn't any magical technique that works reliably that if you just do this, you can suddenly start accepting stuff, you know? It is something, I talked about this last week, it is something that can happen. It is something that does happen on this journey. It starts to happen when you come through the portal. It happens more with the orange glowy character in the middle. And then it happens all the time with the glowy character on the far right. But you can't make it happen. You can't rush it. You can't force it. There's no magical technique. And my bias is if you look out there, including the spiritual teacher that sent this thing into my inbox, they didn't technique their way to it either. It just happened one day. Same thing with me. Now, to me, it was not lightning bolt moment. There was a journey that I took, and it's the same journey that I take people on in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. But the net of it is one day, accepting happened. All these kinds of things, surrendering, I talked about this last week, letting go, all these kinds of things that are taught in the spiritual teachings that my bias is nobody can do, or very few people can do. And when they think they did it, it just happened, is my bias. It's ultimately a dead end. It's ultimately what I call a phase one construct, which means it's going to fail. It's going to lead to frustration. It's going to lead to struggle. It's going to lead to limitation, restriction, and negativity. It isn't a war that you can win, but it's a war that can end. So that's where we will end this show. So I have a quick message for you. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be next week. I meant to ask you to put things in the comments, but I'll ask you now. If you liked this, if you found a show that's purely Q&A to be enjoyable, supportive, helpful, and you'd like to see me do it in the future, please type into the comments or the chats, "Do it again, Robert," or "Please do," something like that. I'd love to see another show like this, whatever. Let me know. Because based on how many comments I get while I'm here live and from people watching the replay, that may help me make the decision, or I may just do what I do anyway. But I'd love to hear how you feel about that, having just done almost 90 minutes now of Q&A. So just so that you know, if you missed some or all of the show, this will repeat again in a minute, but I want to make sure you see it because some people will leave. This is a place to go to watch replays of previous episodes. If you missed some of this episode, you can also subscribe to my email list just for this show, which is a great idea because there's lots of benefits you can receive from that. I'm not going to blitz you with 20 zillion emails about stuff, just about the show. And then I've got a message for you here, and then my close to the show. And thank you for joining me here. Thank you for your questions. And here we go. And I'll look forward to seeing you again in whatever shape or form it takes. So here's my short message for you, and then the close to the show. Bye-bye for now. During the episodes of this show, I talk a lot about an inner shift that must take place before things will truly and permanently change in your life. That inner shift I speak about absolutely can happen for you, but you cannot think your way there, technique your way there, or create, manifest, or attract it. It has to happen in a different way. I can help you experience that shift. And the best way that I know to do it is through what I call the Ultimate Freedom Experience that I offer live and online. To get all the details, visit my website, robertscheinfeld.com, and take the first step down that road, which is to download and read the guide that I created called Living the Unblocked Life. Uncover and dissolve what secretly blocks you most. It's free, it's a quick read at just 11 pages, and it will start the ball rolling for you. Get your copy at robertscheinfeld.com. For more information on how I can help you unblock yourself and experience ultimate freedom, visit my website, robertscheinfeld.com, and while you're there, get the guide. The guide will open a gateway into a free video masterclass that gives you all the details.